My parents didn't answer any calls for an entire week. When I reached their home, everything was in complete shambles. I was about to phone the police. When I suddenly heard a noise from the closet, my heart froze. Inside, there was. Can you imagine finding a child, your own nephew, so utterly traumatized and broken, hiding in a dark wardrobe that his silence screams a truth more horrifying than any words could ever convey? That day, my entire world, everything I thought I knew about family, shattered into a million pieces. My name is Jackson Palmer, and I'm 31. From the outside, my life in Las Vegas, managing a busy hotel, probably looks pretty stable. Good job, decent apartment, a life that keeps me from overthinking. But ask me about my family, about where I grew up in Reno, and you'll hear a different story. One full of cracks, lingering pain, and a love I've always struggled to express. Reno was my hometown, a quiet place where everyone knew your name. My parents, Joseph and Marilyn, were just like the town itself, hardworking, simple, and rooted in their small grocery store. I spent my childhood there, bagging groceries, stocking shelves, soaking in the scent of fresh bread and old wood. That store was my entire world back then, and our house a few blocks away was where I learned to tie my shoes, heard my mother's lullabies, and saw both my parents' smiles and their tears. But we weren't a perfectly happy family. There was always a shadow, a looming presence named Dylan, my younger brother. Dylan was 5 years younger, but from a young age, he was the center of our universe. Mom called him her golden boy. He had this smile, curly hair, sparkling eyes, and my parents, especially Mom, couldn't resist him. They spoiled him rotten. New toys, nice clothes, instant forgiveness for every mistake. Me? I was the older son, expected to be mature, responsible, while Dylan lived carefree, his missteps just harmless pranks. I don't blame my parents. I know they loved us both, just differently. I remember cleaning up at the store while Dylan got ice cream with Mom. Or getting scolded for breaking a glass, while Dylan could spill an entire tray of pastries and just get a pat on the head. Those little things piled up, pushing Dylan and me onto parallel paths, living under the same roof but never truly connecting. At 18, I left for college in Las Vegas. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe, truly live for myself. I studied business, got a good hotel job, and slowly built a new life. But every time I went back to Reno, a heavy feeling settled in my chest. Dylan, now a teenager, was changing. His angelic smile had a new edge of defiance and recklessness. He started skipping school, hanging with the wrong crowd. Then, like an inevitable storm, he fell into gambling. In Nevada, gambling is everywhere, but for Dylan, it wasn't a pastime. It was an addiction. I remember Mom's voice trembling when she first called, saying Dylan had stolen money from the store safe to gamble. I drove back that night. Dad sat silently in his chair. Mom sobbed in the kitchen. Dylan just shrugged. I'll pay it back. No big deal. But he never did. The debts piled up. He married Sutton, a woman I hoped might save him. Their marriage lasted less than 2 years. Sutton left, leaving Dylan and their 3-year-old son, Jaden. Instead of stepping up, Dylan abandoned Jaden with my parents, drifting like a gust of wind, showing up only to beg for money, cause trouble, and disappear again. Jaden, now 6, is the one thing that still brings light to our family. Every time I visit Reno, I spend time with him, telling stories, or just sitting on the porch. He has Dylan's eyes from when he was young, but far more innocent. He calls me Uncle Jack and hugs me tight. But even Jaden couldn't mend the growing distance between my parents and me. Our relationship had been fractured for years. I love them deeply, but their favoritism toward Dylan, the burdens they placed on me every time he messed up, it had worn me down. Every time Mom called, I braced myself for another rant about Dylan, his debts, his trouble. Each time, I felt drained and helpless. Last month, Mom called more often. Her voice was frail, filled with worry. Dylan came by again, she said. He demanded money and brought some strangers with him. I don't know what to do. I told her to call the police, but she just sighed. He's my son. I can't do that. I hung up, heart heavy. I knew she wouldn't. She never did. I thought about going back, confronting Dylan, even bringing Jaden to live with me. But work swept me away, and I told myself everything would be fine. My parents could handle it. I was wrong. Terribly wrong. For a whole week, this creeping unease settled in my heart, like a cold wind through the Vegas summer. My calls to Mom, then Dad, just rang endlessly. Texts sent, one after another. Mom, are you okay? Dad, what are you up to? How's Jaden? Met with silence. At first, I reassured myself. Busy, store, dead phones. But as the third day passed, then the fifth, that unease turned into a raging storm in my chest. Every night, the Vegas neon lights flickered outside, and I clutched my phone, scrolling through. Unanswered messages. My dad, quiet, steadfast. My mom, gentle smile, voice growing weaker with every mention of Dylan. And Jaden, the 6-year-old with big, round eyes, probably clutching his worn teddy bear in that Reno house. My mother's calls about Dylan's incessant disruptions, showing up with strangers, haunted me. Dylan wasn't just asking for money anymore. He was aggressive, reckless. Mom said he'd bang on the door in the middle of the night, yelling about debts. Once, he even threatened to make a big deal if they didn't comply. I wanted to race back, grab him, scream that he had no right to torment them. But I held myself back. I told myself I couldn't keep cleaning up his messes forever. My biggest mistake was thinking I could stay on the sidelines. By the 7th day, with still no response, a call from an unfamiliar number made my heart pound. It was Mrs. Helen, the neighbor across from my parents' store. Her voice was frantic. Jackson, I need to tell you something. Your parents' store has been closed all week. No one's seen them. Something's not right. My blood turned to ice. The store, the place my parents had poured their lives into, never closed for more than 2 days. A whole week was unimaginable. Had Dylan done something? Had he pushed them into a situation they couldn't escape? I couldn't sit still. That evening, I called my boss, requested emergency leave. I need to go home. It's urgent. My voice choked. He just nodded, told me to be careful. I packed a small suitcase, glanced at the Vegas lights, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. A 7-hour drive to Reno. This wasn't just about finding my parents. It was about facing everything I'd avoided for years. Memories flooded back. Afternoons behind the counter with Dad, Mom slipping me peppermint candies, Dylan and I playing tag between the aisles. But no matter how warm, those memories couldn't ease the dread. Every dark stretch of road, I saw Dylan's current image, cold eyes, harsh voice, the threats Mom described. What had happened in that house? The 7-hour drive felt like a lifetime. As the Reno welcome sign came into view, my chest tightened. The town looked the same, but something felt off, like the air itself carried a warning. I drove straight to the grocery store. It was completely shuttered, the Palmer's grocery sign faded and tilted, as if weary. Through the window, only darkness. No light, no life. My heart raced. My parents would never close the store this long. Never. Unless. I couldn't finish the thought. I drove to their house. The familiar road now seemed endless. Every corner, every old oak tree, stirred memories that only deepened my unease. I didn't want to know what I was about to face, but a terrible feeling clung to me. When I pulled up, my heart seemed to stop. Pitch black. Not a single light. Not a sound. The front door was slightly ajar, like someone had left in a hurry. I stepped out, legs heavy as lead, each step leading me toward an abyss. Dad? Mom? Jaden? Only the cold, lifeless wind answered. I pushed the door open, and the sight punched me in the chest. The house, once filled with laughter, Mom's cookies, Jaden's stories, was a wreck. Living room furniture toppled, kitchen cabinet doors open, dishes shattered. A long crack ran across the wall. A wooden chair Dad had proudly built lay broken. Everything screamed chaos, a battle. I stood there, blood in my veins turning to ice. Dad? Mom? My voice was thick, choked, swallowed by the heavy silence. I tripped over a spoon. Each step was a knife twisting in my heart. No one would leave the house like this by accident. Not Dad, who kept everything ordered. Not Mom, who polished floors until they gleamed. Certainly not Jaden, who cherished everything. I tried to gather my thoughts. Robbed? Fled? Or something I didn't dare imagine. I shook my head, needed to find them. To find Jaden. I pulled out my phone, ready to call the police. Then, a faint sound. From the end of the hallway, my parents' bedroom. A shaky, labored breath, mixed with soft, stifled sobs, like a small animal hiding. My heart pounded, blood rushing to my ears. I froze, listening. It came again, clearer, more desperate. I moved toward the bedroom, my legs trembling. The door was ajar. As I pushed it open, a musty smell, cold silence. The bed was disheveled. Jaden? Is that you? Where are you? No reply, just the labored breathing, clearer now, from the corner of the room. The old wardrobe, its door slightly open. My hand shook as I reached for the handle. Sweat beaded on my forehead. It's going to be okay, Jackson, I whispered, but I knew deep down, nothing was okay. The wardrobe door creaked sharply. The darkness inside swallowed the faint light. Amidst the jumble of clothes, the musty smell, I saw a small figure curled up. My eyes strained. And then, the light fell on him. Jaden, my 6-year-old nephew. Those clear eyes I cherished, now wide, red-rimmed, gleaming with a fear I'd never seen in a child. He sat huddled, clutching his tattered teddy bear. His clothes crumpled, filthy, like he'd worn them for a week. Hair matted, face gaunt, pale. He wasn't crying loudly, just soft, choked sobs, like he had no strength left. Jaden, I called, my voice breaking. I knelt, reaching out. He flinched, shrinking. Deeper, as if I were a threat. He clutched the teddy bear so tightly I feared it would tear. Jaden, it's Uncle Jack. You're safe now, I said, my voice trembling, trying to stay calm even though my heart was screaming. But he just stared, panicked eyes searching for something to trust. Slowly, I reached out again, gently touching his shoulder. He didn't pull away, but his body shook violently, like a dry leaf. What happened? Where are Grandma and Grandpa? I asked, fighting back tears. I needed to know. Why was the house a ruin? Why weren't my parents here? Why was Jaden hiding like a wounded animal? But Jaden said nothing. He just stared, red eyes wide. Then, as if his last bit of strength gave out, he collapsed into my arms. His small body felt weightless, so frail. I held him close, feeling his rapid breaths. A pain deeper than anything I'd ever known washed over me. This boy, my beloved nephew, had endured something horrific. And I, who should have protected him, hadn't been there. It's okay. I'm here now, I whispered, carrying his limp body. I scanned the room again, hoping for any sign of my parents, a note, a clue. Only silence and chaos. The house, once my sanctuary, now felt like an abandoned battlefield. I couldn't stay. Jaden needed help. I had to get him out. I carried him to the car, laid him on the back seat, wrapped him in a blanket. His eyes were closed, chest rising and falling faintly. I jumped into the driver's seat and sped toward the nearest hospital, my heart pounding like it might burst. The 10-minute drive felt like a century. I kept glancing at Jaden in the rearview mirror, terrified he might slip away. Hang on, buddy, I muttered, my voice breaking. I won't let anything happen to you. But in my mind, questions swirled like sharp blades. Where were my parents? What had happened? At the ER, I practically shouted for nurses. Help my nephew. He's not okay. A team rushed over, whisking Jaden inside. I stood helpless. A nurse, concerned but professional, asked about his condition. I could only shake my head. I don't know. I just found him in a wardrobe. He hasn't said anything. Please save him. The doctors worked quickly. 4, heart rate, blood pressure. I watched through a small window. Jaden lay there, small and fragile, like a bird with broken wings. A doctor emerged, his face grave. The boy is severely dehydrated and malnourished, likely from days without food or water. He's also experiencing significant psychological trauma. We'll keep him here for observation. Can you tell us anything about what happened? I shook my head, overwhelmed. I don't know. I just got home and found him like that. Deep down, I knew I couldn't stop here. Jaden had survived. But what about my parents? The wrecked house, the signs of violence, the eerie silence. I clenched my fists, anger and pain surging like fire. I had to go back. I called a friend at the hotel to cover my work. I don't know how long this will take, I said, my voice hollow. He didn't ask questions, just told me to take care of myself. I hung up, feeling like I was severing a piece of my normal life, stepping into a nightmare. Back in the car, I drove to my parents' house. The Reno night was cold, the moonlight casting an eerie glow. Inside, I moved carefully, not touching anything. The house was exactly as I'd left it, wrecked, cold, like a wound that refused to heal. I walked through each room, searching for a clue. In the kitchen, I saw a family photo frame on the floor, cracked glass. My parents' smiles, mine, even Dylan's from when we were kids. A summer day before everything fell apart. I pulled out my phone, hands trembling as I dialed 911. I need to report a missing persons case, I said. My parents. They're not at home. And my nephew, I found him in critical condition. The house, it's been ransacked. Please come. Quickly. My voice choked with each word. The dispatcher told me to wait. I sat on the old sofa, trying to stay calm. My dad's jacket on the rack, pockets empty. A cold cup of coffee on the table, as if he'd left mid-sip. Everything screamed a story I couldn't decipher. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed. 3 officers stepped inside, followed by a man in plain clothes, a detective. Are you the one who called? Jackson Palmer, the man asked, his voice low and steady. I nodded. I'm Detective Matthew. Tell us what you know. I led them through the wreckage. The broken chairs, shattered dishes, the crack on the wall. I told them about the unanswered calls, Mrs. Helen's call, finding Jaden. Each word was a stab, but I forced myself to keep going. Matthew took notes, his eyes sharp. We'll look into everything, he said, but first, we need to secure the scene. Officers cordoned off the house with yellow tape. Neighbors gathered. Whispers floated through the crowd. I heard arguing last week. An elderly woman, Mrs. Carter, told an officer. Loud shouting. Another man, Mr. Thompson, chimed in. I saw Dylan around here a few times. He was with some rough-looking guys. Once, I saw them outside the store like they were watching something. Each word hit me like a hammer. Furious, desperate, I wanted to scream for answers. But I knew I had to stay calm. The police needed me clear-headed. Jaden needed me strong. But deep inside, a fear was growing like a snarling beast. If Dylan was involved, if he had done something to my parents, I didn't know how I'd face that truth. Matthew called me over, asking more about Dylan. His habits, where he went. I told him everything I knew. He's addicted to gambling, I said. He shows up to ask for money. My mom always forgave him. Matthew nodded. We'll start looking into this angle. But you should prepare yourself. This might not be a simple missing persons case. His words sent a shiver through me. I wanted to believe they were okay, that this was all a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew the truth was waiting and it wouldn't be easy. I turned away, heading back to the hospital, back to Jaden. At Jaden's bedside, he looked slightly better. The 4 fluids had helped, but his eyes still carried a haunting shadow. It's Uncle Jack, I whispered, gently touching his hand. You're okay now. Jaden opened his eyes, those big, round, red-rimmed eyes, locking onto mine. Then, as if a dam of fear had broken, he burst into wrenching sobs. Raw, desperate cries, like he'd been holding them in for too long. He reached out, clinging to me, his small fingers gripping my shirt, afraid I'd vanish. Uncle Jax, don't go, he whispered, his voice trembling, faint, so fragile. I pulled him into my arms, feeling his tiny body tremble. I'm right here, Jaden. I'm not going anywhere, I said, my voice catching. But deep down, I was making a promise I wasn't sure I could keep. A doctor came in. He's more stable now, she said, gentle but serious. But he suffered severe psychological trauma. We need time to assess him further, and it's best not to pressure him right now. I nodded, but my mind swirled. Jaden knew something. He'd been in that house, had seen something. And though I didn't want to push him, I needed the truth. Detective Matthew arrived shortly after, with a female officer. They asked about Jaden's condition, then requested to speak with him. "We'll be as gentle as possible," Matthew said. "I know it's not the best time, but anything the boy can tell us might help find your parents." I looked at Jaden, still clinging to me. I was at a dangerous crossroads. I didn't want him to relive whatever had happened. But I also knew it was the only way. "Jaden," I said, kneeling by the bed, my voice as soft as possible. "Can you help Uncle Jack a little? These people are police officers, and they want to find Grandma and Grandpa. Can you tell us what happened?" Jaden shook his head frantically, his eyes wide with fear. He clutched his teddy bear. "No, I don't want to," he whispered, voice quivering. I hugged him. "I'm right here, Jaden. You don't have to be scared. Just tell us what you remember. I won't let anyone hurt you." I could feel his rapid breathing. I wanted nothing more than to take him away from all this pain, but I couldn't. I needed the truth, no matter how brutal. After a few minutes of my reassurance, Jaden began to speak, his voice halting, punctuated by sobs. Dad came to the house," he whispered, and my heart seemed to stop. "Dad came with some other people. They were yelling. Grandma and Grandpa yelled back." Jaden paused, eyes wide, reliving the moment. I held his hand. "Go on, buddy. What did they do?" Jaden trembled, tears streaming. "Dad, he was really mad. He shouted, told Grandma and Grandpa to give him money, but they wouldn't. Then there was a loud crash. Things broke." He stopped, clutching the teddy bear, body shaking violently. I was scared. I ran to the wardrobe. I hid. His voice faded, sinking into a memory too heavy to bear. I heard Grandma and Grandpa cry out. Then everything went quiet. My blood turned to ice. I held Jaden tightly, fighting back tears. Inside, a storm raged. Dylan. He was there. He fought with our parents. The sounds Jaden heard. I didn't dare think further. Matthew and the officer took notes, their expressions hardening. "Do you remember anything about the people with your dad?" the officer asked, gentle but careful. Jaden shook his head, tears spilling again. "I don't know. They were tall. They were scary. Covered in tattoos." He broke into wrenching sobs, clinging to me. I knew he couldn't say more. I signaled to Matthew, and he nodded. "Thank you, Jaden. You're a brave boy. We have enough to start the investigation, and Dylan will be our primary suspect." The doctor stepped in, asking everyone to leave so Jaden could rest. "The boy needs time," she said. "He's been through too much." I nodded. My brother, Dylan. What had he done? What had he dragged our parents into? And Jaden, an innocent child, had witnessed it all. I sat by Jaden's bed, holding his hand until he fell asleep. His breathing finally steady, but I couldn't rest. Jaden's words were like sharp puzzle pieces, confirming my worst fear. Dylan hadn't just caused trouble. He might have done something unforgivable. Detective Matthew called the next morning, his voice low and resolute. "We've designated Dylan as the primary suspect based on Jaden's statement. We're issuing a manhunt and checking every place he might show up. Do you have any more information about your brother's habits?" I recounted what I knew, the casinos Dylan frequented, the dive bars. Each word felt like a stab. The police moved quickly. They went to the rundown motel room Dylan rented on the outskirts. But Matthew called with an update, his voice heavy. The room was empty. Trash strewn everywhere, clothes scattered like he left in a hurry. "We're collecting fingerprints." I pictured the room, a chaotic mess, reeking of alcohol and cigarettes. A reflection of the person Dylan had become. He'd fled. He knew what he'd done. Meanwhile, I sat by Jaden's side. He needed time to recover, but every time he startled in his sleep, muttering incoherent words like, "Dad, don't," or "I'm scared," it felt like someone was squeezing my heart. I stroked his hair, whispering, "I'm here, Jaden. Everything's going to be okay." But I wasn't sure if I was comforting him or myself. The truth was, I didn't know if things would ever be okay again. The police continued to track Dylan. A bartender at the Rusty Nail told Matthew that Dylan had shown up a few days ago, frantic, downing drinks, muttering about needing money fast. He looked like he was being hunted, constantly looking over his shoulder. Then he left without paying. Those details sent a chill through me. Dylan wasn't just running, he was terrified. A key lead came from a creditor named Eddie, a man the police tracked down at a small casino. Eddie, with a gravelly voice and cold eyes, said Dylan owed him tens of thousands. He begged me for more time, Eddie recounted. Said he was about to come into big money to pay it all off. Mentioned something about family taking care of it. Family taking care of it. Eddie's words hit me like a hammer. What did Dylan mean? Was he planning to get money from our parents from the grocery store? Or something worse? The police issued a citywide manhunt, extending it to surrounding areas. News of the case spread like wildfire in the quiet town. Neighbors gathered outside my parents' house, whispering, their eyes a mix of pity and curiosity. Mrs. Carter visited me and Jaden at the hospital, bringing cookies. I can't believe this, Jackson, she said, trembling. Joseph and Marilyn were good people. And Dylan. I saw him with some shady characters. I was worried, but I never thought it would come to this. Her words only fueled the fire in my chest. I wanted to scream that I didn't want to believe it, that my brother could do something so horrific. But the pieces were falling into place. Jaden's account, the wrecked house, the neighbors' stories, Eddie's words, they all pointed to Dylan like arrows aimed straight at my heart. I sat by Jaden, holding his small, cold fingers. He was still sleeping restlessly. I thought about the years Dylan was coddled, defended, forgiven. The times I tried to pull him out of his mess, only for him to smirk and say, "Worry about yourself, Jax. I know how to live my life." Now his way of living had led to this. A destroyed home, a traumatized child, and our parents missing. Somewhere out there, Dylan was hiding, carrying secrets I both yearned and dreaded to uncover. I hoped the police would find him, drag him out of the shadows. But I feared that moment, facing Dylan. What would I see? A criminal? A brother? Or a monster who had destroyed our family? Matthew called again late that night. We're narrowing it down, he said, firm but steady. We've got new leads from the outskirts. We'll find him soon. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Thank you, I said, my voice hollow. I wasn't sure if I was truly ready. The next morning, Matthew called me back to the house. Some findings from the investigation team, he said. We need you to confirm a few details. His voice carried an odd tone, like he was bracing himself for something grave. I didn't ask questions. Just drove over, heart pounding. Matthew was in the living room, with another officer. The house remained wrecked, cold like a wound. We've done a more thorough search, Matthew said, leading me to a corner where Dad used to work. We found this in the drawer. He handed me a faded yellow envelope, its edges worn. My name was scrawled across it in Dad's handwriting, a script I'd recognize anywhere. Jackson, it read. A chill went down my spine. I opened the envelope, pulling out a folded sheet of paper. The handwriting was shaky, as if written in panic or fear. I took a deep breath, but nothing could prepare me. Jackson, our son, the letter began. If you're reading this, things have probably gone too far. We're sorry for everything. We were wrong. So very wrong to let Dylan become what he is. We loved him, but we spoiled him too much, letting him grow into a selfish, broken man. We tried to fix it, but it might be too late. I stopped, feeling like I couldn't breathe. The words cut like a sharp, unrelenting knife. My parents had always defended Dylan, forgiven his mistakes, but hearing them admit their fault, in their own handwriting, filled me with both pain and anger. I forced myself to read on, each line slicing deeper. Dylan has changed, Jackson. He's no longer the boy we knew. Lately, he's been coming to the house, often demanding money, threatening us. He talked about selling the grocery store, saying it was the only way to settle his debts. We refused, but he wouldn't stop. He brought strangers, men with cold eyes. We've been living in fear, Jackson. We're afraid of the day things go too far. Tears welled up, blurring the words. I thought I was prepared. No, there was no way to brace for this. My parents had lived in fear, threatened by their own son, and they chose to keep it from me. A wave of anger surged at Dylan, at myself, and even at my parents for letting it come to this. The letter continued, Dad's handwriting growing heavier, as if he knew time was running out. We didn't want to drag you into this, Jackson. You've done so much for this family, carried so much. We didn't want you to face Dylan, didn't want you caught up in this. But if you're reading this, we're probably gone. Take care of Jaden. He's innocent. And please forgive us if you can. I folded the letter, unable to read further. Hot tears fell on my cheeks. The words felt like a final testament, as if my parents knew a tragic end was coming. They'd been pushed to the edge by their own son, and they'd chosen to protect me, no matter the cost. I gripped the letter, feeling it burn in my hand. Matthew stood beside me, his eyes softening, but he said nothing, as if knowing I needed time to process what I'd read. Dylan, I whispered, my voice breaking. His name now felt like a curse, an indelible stain. He'd driven our parents to the brink, and I could no longer stand on the sidelines. I handed the letter to Matthew. Keep it. It's evidence. He nodded, placing it in a clear plastic bag. His eyes told me he understood this wasn't just evidence, but a piece of my family's tragedy. I returned to the hospital right after. Jaden was still sleeping, his face less pale. The letter's words echoed in my mind, each one a reminder of my parents' mistakes and my own. I'd left them alone too long, thinking distance would shield me from Dylan's chaos. But now I couldn't run anymore. Dylan had destroyed our family, and I had to face him, no matter how brutal the truth might be. 3 days later, my phone buzzed. It was Matthew. His voice was curt, but I could hear the tension. We found Dylan. He's at a cheap motel on the outskirts. We've taken him into custody. Would you like to come to the station? My heart pounded, a mix of relief and dread. They'd found him. I left Jaden at the hospital under the nurse's care. He clutched my hand, eyes still filled with panic, but I forced a smile. I'll be back soon, Jaden, I said, ruffling his hair. As I stepped out, I felt like I was walking into a storm. The Reno police station sat in the heart of town, a gray building with long corridors and the stale smell of old coffee. Matthew met me at the entrance, his expression stern but tinged with exhaustion. He's in the interrogation room, he said, leading me down a narrow hallway. He's rattled, but still denying everything. We need you here to confirm some details. I nodded, though inside, I wanted to turn and run. But I couldn't. Not now. The interrogation room was small, with a metal table and stiff chairs. Dylan sat there, facing Matthew and another officer. I stood behind the one-way glass, watching him through the cold pane. He looked haggard, a shadow of himself. Hair disheveled, shirt crumpled, bloodshot eyes suggesting days without sleep. In his hand, a small bag containing some cash and fake IDs, clear signs he'd planned to flee. But what chilled me was his eyes, panicked yet still defiant, as if he thought he could still escape. Matthew began the interrogation, his voice calm but sharp. Dylan, we know you were at your parents' house last week. We have statements from your son, from neighbors, and from a creditor. What did you do? Dylan kept his head down, hands clasped tightly, but his mouth stayed stubborn. I just went to ask for money, he said, his voice weak. We argued, sure, but then I left. I didn't do anything. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. He was lying. I knew it. Matthew knew it. The room itself seemed to know it. Matthew didn't flinch. He placed a stack of documents on the table, including my parents' letter and photos of the wrecked house. You sure about that, Dylan? He asked, his voice cold as steel. Jaden said you came with some men, you fought with your parents, and he heard things breaking, loud crashes. How do you explain that? Dylan shifted, his eyes darting away. The kid's making it up, he muttered, but his voice trembled. Matthew pressed on, his tone growing sharper. We also have a statement from Eddie, your creditor. He said you promised big money to pay off your debts. Where was that money coming from, Dylan? Your parents' store? Their house? I stood behind the glass, feeling the ground crumble beneath me. Each of Matthew's words was a puzzle piece, forming a horrifying picture. Dylan bowed his head, silent, but I could see his shoulders trembling. He was breaking, and I both wanted to scream at him and run from what I was about to hear. Suddenly, Matthew's phone buzzed. He answered, his calm demeanor instantly replaced by grave seriousness. The room fell silent as he nodded a few times, then hung up. Matthew stood, his voice dropping, each word heavy like a hammer strike. Dylan, I just got a call. The crime scene team found the bodies of Joseph and Marilyn Palmer in a vacant lot not far from their house. Both were brutally attacked. Evidence at the scene matches what we found in the house and Jaden's statement. Do you have anything left to deny? The world stopped. Bodies. My parents. I gripped the chair's edge, my head spinning. Their letter, with its trembling words, now became an unbearable truth. I wanted to scream, to shatter the glass and grab Dylan, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, frozen, tears streaming down my face without me noticing. Dylan looked up, his face pale as death. No, it wasn't, he stammered, but his voice faltered, as if he didn't believe his own lie. Matthew didn't give him a chance. He slid photos of the crime scene across the table on his phone, images I knew I couldn't bear to see, but I knew they were real. Anything else to say, Dylan? Matthew asked, his voice now a razor's edge. Dylan broke down, his sobs echoing in the small room. He buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. And then, as if his last strength had drained away, he confessed. I didn't mean to, he said, his voice breaking. I just wanted money. I needed it to pay my debts, but they wouldn't give it to me. They yelled, called me a disgrace. I lost control. I hit them. I didn't know what I was doing until they were lying there not moving. My heart tore apart. Dylan, my brother, once Mom's golden boy, had beaten our parents to death. He continued, voice trembling, trying to justify his crime. I panicked. I called some guys from the casino. We buried them in the lot. I thought if no one knew, I could sell the store, the house, pay off my debts, and start over. The room was stunned. Matthew kept his face stoic, but I saw his hand tighten around his pen. The officer beside him shook her head as if unable to believe it. And I just stood there, staring at Dylan through the glass. He was no longer my brother. He was the monster who killed our parents, left Jaden in terror, and destroyed everything our family had. I turned away, unable to look any longer. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't wipe them. Rage and grief burned together in me. An unquenchable fire. I wanted to scream at Dylan, to demand why he could do this to our own family, but I knew no answer would ease this pain. Matthew stepped out, placing a hand on my shoulder. I'm so sorry, Jackson, he said, his voice softer. We'll bring him to justice. And you should prepare to identify your parents' bodies at the morgue. I nodded faintly, my heart empty. I didn't know how to face this loss. My parents were gone, and Dylan, the brother I once knew, had taken them from me. Dylan's trial took place a few weeks later. I didn't attend. I couldn't face his face, couldn't hear his horrific confession again. Matthew updated me over the phone. Dylan was sentenced to life in prison without parole. He would spend the rest of his days behind bars, paying for his crime. But that sentence didn't bring my parents back, didn't erase the painful memories Jaden carried, and didn't mend the cracks in my heart. I arranged my parents' funeral on a quiet afternoon in Reno. The small church our family used to attend was filled with people, neighbors, friends, customers from the grocery store. Mrs. Carter held my hand, tears streaming. Joseph and Marilyn were good people, Jackson. They didn't deserve this. I could only nod, afraid to speak. The funeral was somber, only the wind rustling through the oak trees, the murmur of prayers. I stood before their graves, feeling like the world had collapsed. But I forced myself to be strong. For Jaden. After the funeral, I took Jaden to live with me. Before my parents' graves, I knelt, placing my hand on the cold headstones. I promised to take care of Jaden like my own son, I whispered. I won't let him suffer anymore. The wind blew, carrying a strange sense, as if my parents were listening, smiling from somewhere far away. I took Jaden's hand, leading him away from the cemetery. In that moment, I knew this was a promise I would keep at all costs. The first days in Las Vegas weren't easy. Jaden was still haunted. He woke up crying every night, calling for his grandparents. I held him close, singing lullabies Mom used to sing, though my voice cracked with tears. "I'm here, Jaden," I whispered. "I won't leave you alone." I spent every spare moment with him, playing, telling stories, trying to bring some light back to his eyes, still shadowed by darkness. Slowly, with patience and love, Jaden began to smile again. His smiles were faint, but to me, they were like sunlight breaking through a storm. I decided to sell the grocery store and the house in Reno. Those places held too many painful memories. I couldn't keep them. The money wasn't much, but it was enough to start a new life for Jaden and me. I moved us into a larger apartment in Las Vegas, with a room just for him, where I hung his drawings and placed his worn teddy bear on the bed. In the months that followed, as Jaden and I settled into our new rhythm, I reflected on my family. My parents had made mistakes, spoiling Dylan too much, letting him become selfish and broken. Their favoritism left deep wounds, not just for me, but for them and Jaden too. But I also realized that despite our family's flaws, love and responsibility were the foundation that held us together. I learned a painful lesson. Blind indulgence can push a child down a destructive path, even to tragedy. But I also believed that with love and responsibility, I could save a life, Jaden's life. One evening, as the neon lights of Las Vegas lit up the sky, I held Jaden's hand, walking him down a bustling street. He pointed at the lights, giggling at a fountain that changed colors. I looked at him, and for the first time in months, I felt a stillness in my heart. No more nightmares. No more echoes of Dylan's shouts. No more painful memories of Reno. Just me and Jaden, uncle and nephew, walking together under the bright, hopeful glow of this city. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Jaden would still have nights when he woke crying, and I would carry the scars of what Dylan did. But I was determined to build a new family, one without violence, favoritism, or betrayal. A family built on love, where Jaden could grow up without fear. Where I could keep my promise to my parents and to myself. As we stopped by a fountain, Jaden looked up at me, his eyes sparkling. "Uncle Jax, can I stay with you forever?" he asked, his voice small but full of hope. I knelt down, hugged him, and smiled, though tears welled in my eyes. "Forever, Jaden," I said. "You and me, we're family." Our story closed under the radiant lights of Las Vegas. In my heart, there was only stillness and resolve. I would not let our family's tragedy repeat. I would give Jaden the life he deserved. And I would honor the meaning of family, not through blind indulgence, but through love and responsibility. That was the legacy I wanted to leave, not just for Jaden, but for my parents, who loved us however imperfectly. This story, it changed me forever. It made me confront things about family, forgiveness, and responsibility I never imagined. Have you ever had to make an impossible choice for someone you love, even if it meant sacrificing a part of yourself? Or perhaps, like me, you've had to pick up the pieces of a broken family, trying to build something new from the wreckage? I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have done in my place?